My name is Hugh Campbell. Lived all my life at Lake Ainslie, and I'm a member of the Historical Society since its inception. And I'm here to do a little bit of an interview today. It was D-Day, as everybody knows. And I can recall when I was a kid, I'd be about probably 7 years old, and my sister 8. And it was the beginning of the end of World War II. Canada doing a major punching above its weight. Only 12 million people in Canada at the time. They had 14,000 sent over there to push back the Germans, and along with the other countries that were able to do it. So I remember D-Day at home. Everybody was excited because there were a lot of young men in the war serving, and so there was people were celebrating, and well they might. There weren't too many cars on the road then, but there was cars going by blowing their horns, and my dad, I think, was away working, that probably teaching school. And so my mother gave my sister and I a pot each and a big spoon, and we were going up and down the driveway banging on the pots and pans. So that just came to my mind. And the other thing about it too, my father didn't serve, although he wanted to. He wanted to join the Air Force, but there was restrictions as to people who were school teachers and people who were farmers, and he was a mixed farmer at the time, and so he was best for him to stay home with his family. So that's just wanted to, and I can also remember a lot of stuff during the war, using the ration books, and my dad had a '39 Ford, and he couldn't get tires for it, and the tires were bald and they were all cracked and they were leaking. Couldn't keep air in them, and I remember him lacing one up with a leather lace, and then putting a big blowout patch in it, in the tube, and you can imagine how wobbly that would make the car. But anyway, the wheel would go around, and he'd be able to use it a little bit to get groceries and stuff. So those are sort of my memories, and also listening to Gabriel Heater. He was a CBC, I think it was, commentator. We had no power at the time, but he did have a battery radio with a long battery and a couple of dry cells along with it, and a big antenna outside, and he could get the news. And I can remember and some of the neighbors would come in and listen to the news. He was one of the only people that had a radio, and it was scary for us as kids, you know. Like my sister said to me yesterday, she remembered him. He was very dramatic about it when he was given the news. The Germans are at your back door, don't forget it. Something like to that effect. I can't remember this. My sister said she was scared because she was expecting them to come to the front door at any time. So anyway, that's some of the memories of came to me yesterday when I was watching the D-Day events take place. I've never been there, but I was in one place in England, Harrogate Cemetery, where my dad's first cousin, my second cousin, was killed not in action, but in training. He was an Air Force. I'm not sure if he was a tail gunner or what he was, but there was 3 or 4 of them in the plane that crashed. And my first wife and I went there to see his grave and the stone. And it was very, very moving to me, because when we were there, It took us a little time to find out where the grave was and the stone was, and we did, and we were there looking at it, and this lady came up, and she was from Australia, and she read the stone. Oh, and his name was Webster. She said, "Oh, Webster, often wondered what happened to him." And it turned out that he came to her house when he was living there and training. She said my mother would wash his socks, and then they went to dances. So, but she didn't want us to take her picture, and so we didn't. But my wife, when she took a picture of her from behind her back when she turned around, and lo and behold, we could never find that picture. We took it home, got it developed, and I had it, and I could see it in my mind's eye yet, but it disappeared somehow. And anyway, it was a moving experience for us to meet her there. And you often wonder, in time of war and going to dances and everything questionable, if there wouldn't be an offspring there. I shouldn't be bringing this up probably, but
Never know.
you never know. And I guess we probably never will. I did try a little bit, but maybe with today's technology you might find it.
Yeah.
Went to school in a one-room school, and my father was teacher a lot of the time I was there, and my aunt was another, and my uncle. All my relatives were my school teachers, except I think there was one or two that weren't. But it's a one-room school, and it was only grades 1 primary to 11. They weren't teaching grade 12 because the teachers didn't all have grade 12. Like grade 11 was considered a goal for everybody. If you had grade 11, you were, I mean, it's nothing today, but if you had less than grade 11, you were disadvantaged in the eyes of people. So I stuck it out to grade 11, and that was it. I wasn't going to go to school anymore, though they wanted me to keep going, but I didn't do it. But anyway, it worked out for me. Anyway, I can't complain. I had a good run. You know, and I was lucky too over the years. Like they were mining barite in the mountains back of Lake Ainslie at the time. It had been from the turn of the century, and off and on. So this time the Department of Mines in Nova Scotia, I don't think there is any Department of Mines anymore, but they call it something else. But they were hiring driller helpers on diamond drills. So just after I got out of school, I got on with them, and I worked there for almost 2 years drilling in the mountains, and as a helper, I worked at the gypsum plant in Little Nares for a summer. Their sister plant up in the province was on strike, so they were hiring extra people, so it was a lot of us from here got on over there. Then I worked on the Trans-Canada Highway for a better part of a year when they were building it through Icogam. And in between, if there was slack times in between, cut pulp for Mercy Paper Company, 4-foot wood. And then I got a job at Robin Jones and Whitman in Inverness, which is now where the Kent store is. And I worked there for 3.5 years for $45 a week. But it wasn't too bad, really, because the price of gas then was only about 35 cents a gallon. Everything was relative. So I was able to have a good life there, but lo and behold, they decided to build a pulp mill in Port Hawkesbury. And I could see nothing but good things from those stacks that are frowned upon now with all the emissions coming out of them. And it was a success to me in my eyes. So I had every Wednesday afternoon off. So I went to Hawkesbury every Wednesday afternoon. I went to Port Hawkesbury, or Point Tupper, I should be saying, and tried to get on. And believe it or not, but back then politics had something to do with getting on. I was on the wrong side of politics, but that didn't hold me back. All my friends on the other side were getting on, and I wasn't. And by God, I guess tired looking at me, I think, and they hired me. Provincial government was conservative at the time, and they were getting preference. But today that doesn't happen. My father was active he was working for Allen J and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I don't hold it against anybody, but it was a good life, but we didn't know anything different. As a kid, I didn't realize that things were booming in New York and Toronto and even in Halifax. We were just living off the land. That's what we were doing. They call it subsistence farming, and that's what it was. But we were never, ever hungry. We didn't even know that the Depression was happening, because we weren't relying on going to a grocery store. We had everything except tea, salt, sugar, kerosene for the lamps because there was no power. A few items like that. Molasses, big thing. Flour.
Yeah.
But I had a lunch here last night I had in the freezer there, and that was making me sick. The plastic I threw away after I ate it. You know? So it's no wonder we're in the state we're in. Dad had 3 or 4 cows. It wasn't a big operation because he was teaching school. And 3 or 4 cows, 1 horse, hens, have 1 pig every year for meat, 1 beef, and that'd be all butchered and salted into barrels in a brine, pickled brine. And you'd eat out of those barrels all winter, your meat. You'd have salt herring too, probably, and maybe salt eels. And of course you'd have a bin full of potatoes in the cellar to do you the whole, till the potato season. New potatoes were up the next spring. And my mother would have all kinds of preserves, like wild strawberries, whatever was in season, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, whatever, and she'd have them all preserved. And she'd have 2 or 3 crocks of crock as a container made of crockery with a cover on it, and she'd salt the butter in there. So everything had to be salted, or, it wouldn't keep. The only fresh meat you'd have would be for a week after the butchering was done, the pig or the cow. Like I said before, we didn't even know the Depression was happening, because it was the same for us anyway. But never, ever in my life can I say I was hungry.
I did.
Oh, there's always plenty. And for entertainment, I think you asked me that too. We'd go play cards. My brother-in-law now, DJ from DJ McLean's son, we'd go on Friday nights and play a game called 51 with the older neighbours. Well, some married couple, younger couples as well. So we'd go all winter long. We'd do that. We'd walk, it wasn't very far, and play cards with them. And but we enjoyed it, and I think they did enjoy it. So And then, of course, there'd be card games in the schoolhouses, and there'd be a Christmas concert in the school. That's a story in itself. The Christmas concert, we would start preparing for that in November. And I remember one teacher we had, my uncle actually, he was a carpenter, and he'd build a stage, and then he'd get plays from different places, and recitations and monologues, and sometimes there wouldn't be enough kids, so they'd bring the community, the older folks, into the scene, and they'd be acting as well. I can remember some of the titles. One play was this. It was kind of a debate kind of thing. Is pig's tail pork? And what was another one? Jelly for the minister was another one. But anyway, I remember this heavy man was, I forget the name of this one, but he had to be a black fellow. Of course, I mean, you'd be frowned upon to do what they were doing. And they'd take soot from the stove and put it all over his face. 'Cause that would make him a black man. I don't know if I should even be talking about this on here.
Second.
I mean, it's not happening now, but it did happen then. It was hilarious when you think about it. Anyway, but the Christmas concert, each school would have one, and you'd attend the other ones too. You'd be happy to go to the other concerts, so you wouldn't have to be doing a part in it yourself. Showers were held in the homes, so, and they had what they call a chivaree then. Bobby, you heard of them, did you? I don't know where the word came from, but it was called a chivaree. And this was after the bride and groom got married, and they went on their honeymoon somewhere, probably to Antigonish or those couple of hotels up there way back. And when they'd come back home, so instead the community would find out they were back home, they want to have this chivaree, they call it. And you'd go with take your car, if you had a car, and you go to their house, maybe after they went to bed, and just go in the yard and blast the horns, and they wouldn't stop. And there'd be probably fellas firing shots in the air and stuff, and they wouldn't stop till the couple came out. And the couple knew this advance was likely going to happen. So then, when they came out and you got to talk to them or get invited in or whatever, then that was the chivalry was over. You know, they did fish too. They'd make holes in the ice, but it wouldn't be legal to fish there until after the 1st of April, I think it was. But to the oven, usually the ice is too thin or it's gone by then. But people would go fish anyway because there was the roads would be blocked. There's no way that officers would come and catch you unless the road was open. So they'd get a few trout that way. And like the horse races, I remember I know they had them every year, you know, before my time. But I remember being at one when I was very young, probably. My mother was scared to go near the ice, scared of the water, scared of the ice. So Dad had a horse who was pretty snappy on his feet, just a work horse. But he had some racing blood way back. My grandfather, my father's father, had a racehorse, and this is a son of her. And it was given to Dad when he started up the farm. So he took me and we went to the horse race. A beautiful sunny day. Remember, he just had what they call a wood sleigh, just a rough working sleigh, and the one horse, and his sides on it, with hay in the bottom. I'd sit in the hay, and he'd usually stand up on the sleigh. But we weren't there to race. We were there to watch the other race. They had They weren't sulkies. They were on like sleds with runners on them that were light, and they looked a bit like a sulky you'd see on a racetrack today. So there were several of those. I remember the names. Ainslie Lady was one of them. Raymore was another one. And there were two or three others, and I can't remember their names. But anyway, they set it all up, and they had marked off the distance and so forth. And they'd have the race and determine who was first, second, or third. And then when the race was all over, they'd have a free-for-all for all, because everybody would have a horse and sleigh of some kind out there. There's no other way to get there unless you walked out if it wasn't very far. So they'd set them up, so Dad got in line to go in this race with the bulky old sleighs, and they weren't race horses or anything. So they'd set it up, and I don't know, they fired a shot. I can't remember how you started anyway. And we won the race. Because I think it's because my father's horse had racing blood in him. And but I tell you, it was better for me than the Kentucky Derby. I remember when we moved to Scottsville, I mentioned this to you before. I'll tell a little more about that later. But it was like for me to move from East Lake, Trout Rivers, where we were up here, or this area, and for me to move into a new school at Scottsville, it was only 6 miles away, was like somebody taking a kid out of here and taking them to a big school in Toronto now. And I didn't like it. I didn't like any part of it. I wanted to stay home, but couldn't stay home, of course. So there was one fella, I guess you'd call it bullying. He was kind of picking at me all the time, and well, teacher's pet, I suppose, was what was happening. He thought. So there's two older boys. One of them is still living. Hugh McLean. He was a couple of years old. He was 2 grades ahead of me, I think. And he and his friend, they were both the same age. They were bigger boys by then. And they were seeing what was happening. So they set it up. He said, no, I won't say the name, but the young fellow that was doing the picking on me went out for recess. And he said, when you come in, now you get up, there had a big pile of firewood in the lobby. That's a wood stove, it was in the school. You get up on top of that wood. When he comes in, jump on him. So I listened to them, and I went up on the pile of wood. They were watching at the door. Here he gave me the signal that he was coming. So I came in, I jumped and landed on top of him. We wrestled on the floor. And we were best of friends after that. And another little one in Trout River School, we DJ from DJ McLean and so on, were friends since we were this high, and still are. I go to his house every day, and he's married to my sister, and they're both living there, but they're doing okay. So with this teacher would send us for the water. No running water in the school, so they'd send us with a bucket to the brook. And I don't know how we were getting away. It would be away the longest time. And there was a big ant's nest. Oh, it must have been a foot high and 1.5 foot in diameter anthill. So we'd spend a lot of time tearing that apart. Oh, it was cruel. I just shouldn't have been doing it. But it would tear it all apart. Then to see how much they'd have it built the next day. The poor ants would work. As you can imagine how long we were gone after the water before we get back. Put the water on the stand. And I can remember yet there was a dipper, small dipper, hanging on a nail. by the bucket. And all the kids used the same dipper. Get a drink of water, hang it up. Same thing as you can imagine when the coals started around, everybody's going to definitely have the cold.
Yes.
My dad had a coal shed out beside the house, and we must have been 12, 13 something, just the time it's going to be cool to smoke. So we'd raise the ash. My father had a 39 Ford, and DJ's father, Alan Jack, had a 35 Plymouth, and would go into the car and open the ashtray and pull all the butts out, open them, and we'd get between the two ashtrays, we'd probably get enough to, and then we'd swipe a couple of cigarette papers and a couple of matches, and have a little smoke. But this night we decided to do it. He was staying up, and we were staying out in the shed. It was a little bunks. It was I think it was formerly a little fishing shack or something that he'd brought home just to use later on for a coal shed. And so we're in there, and they went to bed upstairs, and their windows open in summertime. And of course we figure we're safe there, they're asleep. And of course we started smoking. The aroma went out through the little window in the shed and up into their bedroom. They could smell. Well, it weren't long enough. Somebody out taking the stuff away from us. Blew our party. It would be a square dance every night of the week. And when you'd be on school vacation after old enough to have a license, and I had my dad's car, and I guess it was actually it would, took home girls once in a while, and then I was working at the Robin Jones at the time, and I had met her before, but we started going out, and it was a natural thing that after a while we got married and had 2 children, and she unfortunately passed away at the age of 43 with stomach cancer. Jill was 18, Milton was 21, I think. So, but she was, my wife's brother was married to my present wife. They had separated. It was an abusive relationship, and they separated. They were separated for 18 years, I think, when Florence died, and so it just sort of to be a natural thing. She had been at her mother's funeral in Limerick, just got home, and her daughter, she had 3 daughters, told her about Florence's death, because we would have known each other, because they were a sister and a brother. What am I saying here? I was married to Jack's sister, who was married to Kathy at the time. So it just evolved, and in a short time, she married me and down here, and she moved here. And she's still here in Inverness in the manor. So that's sort of how that happened. Square dance every night of the week. Wednesday night was Glenville. Winston Scotty Fitzgerald played there. Have you ever heard of him? Buddy McMaster was playing at Kenlock on Tuesday. And Inverness, I don't know, I can't remember different ones we play in there, but in the Legion Hall, and there was some in the Parish Hall, which was it was the Labour Temple Hall first in Inverness when the mines were flourishing, and they had the big union there. And of course, when the mines dissolved, the parish ended up with the hall. It was known as the parish hall, and we used to go to those. And I think Saturday night was Wycogham, and Friday night, I believe, was Southwest Margaree. There was one, and we were going to the majority of them, and you'd be working stuff too. But when you're young, you can do some of that stuff. And I never drank till I was 22. So I think that's one of the reasons you get away with it. You wouldn't be hungover from. Anyway.
Sounds like great years. And Broadco started around then too, right? The Broadco concert started in the 50s.
Yes, we used to go to those, to the Broadco concerts too. Yeah, they're still going.
I'm looking at my list here, what they wanted me to ask. I'm getting pretty... when you were growing up around here, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do when you grew up? Like, sort of just like a job or a career in mind, or were you more just excited to see what was out there?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just I was willing to work, and I wanted to work and make money. That was there was no guidance counselors back then. So all you knew of, there was a doctor, and there was a lawyer, and there was a carpenter, and there were so many other options that were there then that you probably didn't even know about. I love it here. But, but I still went away a lot. Like, after I married Kathy, we made 2 trips a year to Toronto for over 30 years. So we got to know the city of Toronto quite well.
Was that to visit family or to work?
Just Kathy and I go up and visit with her family. They're still up there. I talk to them every day. So...
it is a great place around here, isn't it? Yeah.
What's that?
It is a great community here.
It is, yeah, it is. And the thing is, what always kind of hits my mind is the complete turnaround since we were living on the farm as a kid to today, where then you really, you might as well say you had very little, but you had lots of food. And of course, and today we have everything here that you'd have in Toronto or New York City or anywhere else. Pretty well, and you have means of going there if you want to. Like that means there's people going to hockey games in Toronto and all over the place now. They just fly there. And McDonald House, I think it's important. I guess that's why myself and so many others decided to start it up in 1979. So it's kind of preserve some of the past. So but now it's like everything else. The membership is getting older, and we don't have a lot of people stepping up to take over. Well, I'd like to speak a little bit about going way back when my father was a young man and starting a young family. Like, he wanted to join the army in World War II, or the Air Force. Okay, and the other thing about that was back then, and it still exists here today, really, the oldest boy in the family got the farm. So Dad had an older brother, so he was sometimes if the acreage was big enough, they'd split it and give half to each. But I guess they must have determined that Dad's father's farm wasn't big enough for two. So my Uncle Archie got the farm, and was just a given then. That's how it was done. And so Dad, any other brothers or girls weren't part of that, because they'd likely end up in a farm anyway, because they'd marry somebody that inherited the farm. So it'd be just the boys. So they'd all go away, to out west, States, Halifax, wherever. And you probably wouldn't see them for 40 years.
Goodbye.
But Dad didn't want to do that. So he decided to buy a farm. And as far as I know, he's probably one of the first that ever farmed and didn't inherit it. So he bought this farm, and I have the documentation yet. He paid $500 for it. There was no buildings on it.
Right.
I think there was an old barn, but it was pretty well fallen down.
Where is this?
Pardon?
Where?
Well, it's right across. My other house was on part of that farm, the one I sold. Do you know Ian McDougall? You know where the newer church is there? Just beyond that, and there's a house. I don't know if you know my daughter Jill Jessup and Vince Jessup. They're school teachers in Inverness. But anyway, that farm must be 10 people paying tax on there now, at least. And I was one of them until I sold. So he bought this farm. It was 100 acres going from the lake, and a mile and a quarter to the back of the property. So, okay, he had a young family just starting,
That.
and he needed a house and a barn and everything to farm with. Didn't have any of it. So he, at that point, just up the road, probably quarter of a mile, or a little more maybe, there was an Orange Hall. You know what the Orangemen were? They were Protestants who were fighting against the Catholics, but the Orange Hall had closed. They were done with it. I guess it was pretty active. At one point, it closed. So and I don't know yet whether they gave him the hall or whether he had to buy it. I'm not sure about that. There's no documentation on that, but he acquired it, this hall. So DJ's father and my grandfather, my mother's father, was a carpenter, and DJ's father was a neighbour, and Dad himself. And they took the building apart because it had an 18-foot post. It was too high for a house. So they wanted to make a bungalow out of it, and they had to move it. And there was no excavators or tractor trailers or anything in to move anything, so it was dragged with teams of horses along the road on skids made from trees from the woods. And I think they took it apart because they had to lower the post. They did that before they moved it, and then they finished it up, made a bungalow out of it. And Ian McDougall is living in that house to this day. He's remodeled it completely. But I mean, it's old, and then once he got there, he had lumber then on the property he bought, so he had to get enough lumber cut in the woods, hauled out with the horses, and there was people in Piper's Glen that owned the Stewart's, I think, a sawmill that was portable of some. They took the mill up there and sawed all the lumber for the barn. The barn is still standing. It's on Ian's property now. He made a workshop out of it. So then my grandfather gave him a horse, the horse that I was talking about before, and he had acquired things like a mowing machine and a raking machine and all the things you'd need on a farm to farm. In the overnight, or it would freeze.
Say that again about how cold the house was. It turned off there for a second.
What's that?
Can you say that again? About what it was like in the house.
Oh yeah, well it was very cold, of course, but with lots of blankets and a good wood fire on it, it wouldn't be too bad. But they'd put the fire out before you go to bed. My grandmother, I can see her yet. She'd spill water from the kettle on little coals that'd be left in there. She was so scared of fire, and I guess she should have been. But
like my grandmother used to tell me they would wrap bricks up. They'd have bricks on top of the wood stove, and they'd wrap it up and bring it and put it at the foot of the bed. Would you ever bring warm stones or bricks up?
Yeah, bricks, yeah. And they used to have the hot water bottles.
Really?
But so he had to acquire all that stuff that everybody else inherited. But of course, the first people that came in 1820 had to acquire it all or bring it with them. They were even worse off. But he bought this 39 Ford. There's a picture of it over there above those cars. And so I remember we were going to make this trip to PEI. I had a sister married in PEI. Oh, it was a big deal. It was the summertime. He wasn't teaching then, so we made arrangements. They knew we were coming. He had to cross the ferry, of course, then. So we took the car down to the brook with an old rag and a bucket and washed it. No soap. And ready to go, and it wouldn't start. The generator was faulty. The brushes were gone, the generators. So they spent the next day with the generator on the kitchen table, took it all apart. So he had to get brushes somewhere for it. I think the following day we got to go. So it was a big thing to make that trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like going to New York.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to mention to you the move to Scottsville when the roads would be blocked and it weren't plowed all winter. Yeah. What was entailed to do that? Well, coming up towards Christmas, they'd start moving stuff down to the apartment. It was prearranged to move because he couldn't drive to Scottsville. It's only 5-6 miles. After, he was lucky if he got up near Christmas, and usually by the mid-November, early December, he couldn't drive. He'd have to use a horse and sleigh for a few trips to school. And at one point, I know he skated. The ice happened to be glib. Once or twice he skated across to the shore on the other side, and where the school is. And so the decision, of course, had been made earlier that we moved there, and he made arrangements with this old lady. Flo McLean was her name, and she was getting quite elderly then, needed a little help, so she was happy to. I don't believe there was rent. I think yes, he'd look after her cow and feed the hens and feed the cow and water the cow. I believe that was going to be the rent. So, but anyway, to move, we had to take this big bin full of potatoes in the basement. You couldn't leave them there. They'd be all frozen solid, and we needed them to eat anyway. But you have to take them all so they wouldn't freeze. So you take that, and all my mother's preserves, pardon me, and the crocks of salt butter, and would take a cow, because the old lady we're staying with had a little barn with one cow in it, and there was room for another one, and would take the cow, and of course take the cow, you had to take the hay for the cow, would have to take the hay, and the little apartment that we were staying in upstairs had a wood stove, so we had to take the wood, the firewood for the winter. So that all had to be moved down to Scots with horse and sleigh.
How many trips?
I can't recall how many trips, there would be a few. Small stuff he'd be taken in the car while you could still drive it. But other than that, it was all going on a horse and sleigh. So there'd be several trips. And then the rest of the animals they had to be farmed out to other farmers in the area that might have needed them anyway if they didn't have a cow that was going to milk all winter. They'd need the milk. So it wasn't hard to get them. And the horse, I think, stayed at my uncle's place. So you can imagine all the arranging that had to be done to make that move just for 3 or 4 months and then take it all back again. So we did that for, I think, 47, 48, 49, 3 years anyway, maybe 4 years every winter.
And what did you think about it? Did you enjoy that?
No, I didn't want to go to any other school but the one I was going to. It was it was okay for my sister, but I was different. I remember coming home early, getting a ride up the lake on a horse and sleigh in April, stayed at my uncle's for a couple of weeks before they moved home.
Couldn't wait to get back.
Yeah, so. But going back to where I started telling that story, I think that he's probably the first guy that had to start from scratch, outside of the ones that came first from Scotland.
Yeah, it's quite a... What's his name?
Pardon?
What was his name?
Edward Campbell.
Okay.
Like I have my grandson, I said now, but a picture. We have the first fellow that came here was Hugh Campbell, 1820, around that. And he had a son, Edward Campbell. He had a son, Hugh Campbell, which was my grandfather. And then Dad, it's Edward. I'm Hugh. Nathan is Hugh Nathan. And his little boy, his name is Dash, but he's Edward Dash. So it's Hugh Edward all the way down.
That's a tradition.
And we have photos of them all.
Well,
But my grandson has that now. Well, I guess I could add that church was a very important thing then. There was a given that you went every Sunday. I mean, that's another story that in their wisdom, the powers that be at the time, and it was a good idea to amalgamate the Presbyterian, Congregational, Methodist churches all into one, and it worked as far as the Methodist Church was concerned, but the Presbyterian Church didn't want to do it, some of them, and some of them did. So that's why you got two churches in so many communities. You got United and the Presbyterian. You got to be. My father was in one, my uncle was in the other, and to be meeting each other, one going to the United, the other going to the Presbyterian, and they're both the same.